Welcome back to Saxon Math. This is lesson 31, areas of rectangles for course 1. Areas of rectangles include things when we measure the inside of a flat shape, we measure the area. So cover is the Q word for area. So for example, area of a rectangle equals the length times the width, and labeling in square units. So if you have this example, you have the length being 3 centimeters and the width being 2 centimeters. You have the length times the width. In this case, it's 3 centimeters times 2 centimeters, and that means the area of that would be 6 centimeters squared. Or you could say 6 square centimeters if you're typing it out. It's a new concept, but here we go. Mr. McGregor fenced in an area for a garden. It was 40 feet long and 20 feet wide. The perimeter of a shape is the distance around that shape. The number of feet of fencing he used was the perimeter of the rectangle. But how do we measure the size of the garden on the inside? How do we measure the inside portion of the garden if we know how to measure the outside? To measure the size of the garden, we measure how much surface is enclosed by the sides of the shape. When we measure the inside of a flat shape, we are measuring its area. So the amount of a shape is the amount of surface enclosed by its sides. We use a different kind of unit to measure area than we use to measure perimeter. To measure perimeter, we're using units of length such as centimeters. Units of area are called square units. Could be square centimeters or square inches, like this, for example. This is 1 centimeter, and this would be considered a square centimeter because it's 1 by 1. It's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. Other common units of area are square inches, square feet, square yards, square meters. It could be any measurement of length. Very large areas may be measured in square miles. We can think of units of area as floor tiles. The area of a shape is the number of floor tiles of a certain size that completely cover the shape. We often use SQ to abbreviate the word square. So example 1, how many floor tiles are in a 1 foot how many floor tiles, 1 foot on each side, are needed to cover the floor of a room that is 8 feet wide and 12 feet long? You could count all of these tiles if you wanted to, but this would be the tedious task. This would not be something you would have to do if you know how to do the area of a rectangle. So area equals length times width, and in this case we know that the length is 12 feet, and we know that the width is 8 feet. So all we need to do is take that 8 feet times 12 feet to get 96 tiles, which is what the answer would be. The area in this case would be 96 square feet, or you could put feet squared. It also means the same as square feet or feet squared. If you're able to write it, you could do a little 2 up in the top like this, or you could do square feet. You could label it out, use actual words, square feet, or you could do feet squared, similar to that one. So it would take 96. If we counted all these tiles in here, it would be 96 1 by 1 foot tiles to cover this surface. Example 2, what's the area of this rectangle? So if you've got 8 centimeters and 4 centimeters, remember the area equals the length times the width. And in this case, we know what the length is. We know it's 8 centimeters. And we know what the width is. It's 4 centimeters. So we're going to multiply those out. The numbers of those would be 32. 8 times 4 is 32. And you can see that there's 2 of those centimeters squared when multiplied together. This also equals 32 square centimeters. Or you could list, instead of abbreviating it, it could be square centimeters, or centimeters could be written out. All of those would be correct answers. So the diagram shows the length and the width of the rectangle in centimeters. Therefore, we will use square centimeters to measure the area of the rectangle. And to calculate the number of square centimeter tiles needed to cover the rectangle by, you just simply multiply the length times the width. And that was our answer, 32 square centimeters. Example 3, the area of a square is 100 square inches. How long is each side of the square? So if the area, again, still, even in a square, the area in a sense is length times width. You still do that. And if you have area in this one, we already know it, is 100 square inches, inches squared. What length times what width will equal 100 even? And it has to be they have to be the same on a square. So what number multiplied by itself will equal 100? So what's the square root of 100? If you know what the square root is, you would know that each side of these would have to be 10 inches long. The perimeter of the square, then, if you know that one side is 10 inches and you know their 4 sides are all equal, you would hopefully recognize that it's 40 inches for the distance around the perimeter. Why can't we divide 100 by 4 to find the length of each side? Because we're looking at area. We're not splitting it up into 4 equal parts. This is the area that's on the inside of the square. So it's how many square inches there would be to cover the inside of this particular square. Okay. So practice set. Find the number of square units needed to cover the area of these rectangles. For reference, square units have been drawn along the length and width of each rectangle. So for example, letter A, go ahead and do that. What is the square units needed to cover something that is 4 by 6? Again, the area equals length times width, and I can see that in this case it'd be 6 times 4. So my area would end up being 24 units squared for letter A. Letter B, go ahead, do 7 by 7. How many square units would be inside of this shape? If you would have answered 49 units squared, you would have been correct. 49 units squared, or 49 square units. The reason why we're using the word units is because there is no designation on what the units are, if they're centimeters or inches or any of those. Find the area of these rectangles. So for letter C, go ahead and answer that one. Area equals length times width. And in this case, the length is 8 centimeters and the width is meters. And your area would end up being 40 square meters, or 40 meters squared. So it could be 40 square meters if you're typing it on the Chromebook. And then letter D. Again, area equals length times width. So you'd have area in this case would be 12 meters times 12 meters. And you'd end up with the area of this particular thing being 144 meters squared, or 144 square meters. Letter E, what's the Length of each side of a square if the square has 25 square inches as the area. So if the area equals length times width, and in this case it's 25 inches squared, what would be the length of each one of the sides of a square? How long is each side? Should have answered 5 inches for the length of each side. And letter F, what's the perimeter of the square if each side is 5 inches? 20 inches would be the perimeter because 5 times 4 is 20, and it's just a distance. Letter G, find the area of Mr. McGregor's garden described at the beginning of this lesson. So if we go back to Mr. McGregor's garden, let's do that. Mr. McGregor's garden was 20 feet by 40 feet. So that's the distance, the length, and the width. So it was a 20 by 40, which means we just need to multiply 20 by 40, and it was feet. So I'm going to say that my label will be square feet for my label. I know what 2 times 4 is 8, and I have 2 zeros on there, so it'd be 800 square feet for the final answer of that. Letter H, choose the appropriate unit for the area of a room in a home. Would you use square inches, square feet, or square miles? Your best choice would be square feet. We're not going to drive a car across the room in your house, and you wouldn't want to inch along to make the measurement either. It would be too many to do that. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Make sure if you didn't quite understand something to review and rewind. We will see you next time right here for the next lesson.